Did you know that the United States and New Zealand are the only two countries that are legally allowed to display advertisements for pharmaceuticals for prescribed medication? When we think of healing, when we think of getting better, a lot of people think about, okay, I need an antibiotic, I need a pill, I need medication. And in some cases, that's the right way to go, right? But we live, especially in the United States here, we live in such a culture of sickness, medicine, right? We don't talk about alternate ways to feel better. We don't talk about alternate ways to heal our body. But I know you specifically want to feel better. You want to experience more overall well being. You want to improve your health so you can spend more time with your family so that you can live longer, right? Studies are literally saying now that if you are 30 years old, there is a very large chance that you will be living to the age of 150 or maybe even older. So you need to know these things, right? Because we're in an age of advancement in the healthcare world and practically every single area of life. And today we're going to be talking about a way that you can experience more overall well-being. We're going to be talking about something that is not widely practiced or talked about in the United States as well as other areas of the world, which is the hidden art of homeopathy. And some of you might know this and you're like, it's not really a hidden art, but for a lot of people like myself, before I met our guest today, Abby Beale, homeopathy was something I've heard about, but I've known nothing about it. And when Abby and I got together and we talked about this and we talked about what she does as a homeopathic healer, and I'll give you her introduction to who she is, it blew my mind, especially when she shared with me the story of her son when her son was 9 months old. And we're going to talk about that. So without further ado, you know the fee for the show. When you take away something from this conversation, share this show with just one person who could use this information. We're not going to show you sponsors. We're not going to run ads because we don't want to interrupt your experience. We want you to get all the information that you need and take action on that information. And all we ask is that you share the show when you take something of value away. So without further ado, let's talk to Abby Beale, our guest today on the broadcast. And for those who don't know Abby Beale has studied homeopathy for over 2 decades. She loves the holistic aspect of this healing art, which encompasses a person's mental, emotional, and physical symptoms. In addition to her homeopathic practice, Abby runs monthly study groups for those interested in getting started to learn more about homeopathy. She calls it Tea with a Homeopath. She says the more people that know and use homeopathy, the healthier we will all be. Abby, it's great to have you here. Thank you so
Great to
much.
be here, Brandon. Thanks so much for giving me this opportunity to educate people.
Absolutely. I'm just
Mm,
happy you're here. I've known
thank
you
you.
for several years now from
Yeah,
going through the Speakers Academy
yeah.
for National Speaker Association in Connecticut, for those who don't know. And I learned a lot
Mm,
from you, a lot when it comes to, books and the speaking business, but I never actually had a conversation with you about you until
mm,
recent when I learned about all the other cool things you do with speed reading, but
mm,
mostly what was most intriguing to me was the homeopathy aspect. So let's start here. How did
mm,
you even discover about this world? Because you said you've been doing it for over 2 decades. Now, just I'm sure you know the stats, but there's over 200 million people worldwide that practice homeopathy. And only 6 million of those people are actually in the United States. And
mm,
that's today. And 2 decades ago, I can only imagine that it was probably less than even 1 million people who were
mm,
practicing this healing art. So how did
mm.
you discover this?
So I just want to clarify when you say practice, it's more people who use homeopathy. There are far less people that practice it, like people who are like myself that are homeopaths. You're talking like in the United States, you have probably, if we're lucky, 1,500 people that are practitioners, but
Wow.
there are a lot more people that use it because it's offered through like a Whole Foods or Vitamin Shop, or you can get them on Amazon now. You can get Remedies there. So it's really more about who's using it, not so much the practitioner. So I just wanted to clarify that for you, Brandon.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So the question was more about how did I get into it with my
Yeah, how
son?
did you discover it? How did you find yourself in this world? Like, talk to me about that.
So as a first time mom in 1995, my son, when he was born, he was fine. I was breastfeeding, doing all the things I thought I was supposed to do. And at 9 months old, he got an ear infection. And so, of course, I go to the doctor, and doctor gave him antibiotics, and the infection went away for about a week, and then it came back, or it was another one, whatever they decided to call it. And that happened for about 6 to 7 times. And
Wow.
so over 6 to 7 months, my son got 6 to 7 antibiotics. I don't remember the exact number, but it was at least 6 doses, series of antibiotics. And then they were talking about putting tubes in his ears, which is a very common thing. But for me as a mom, I'm like going, there's got to be a better way. That's my motto. There's got to be a better way. Like, that doesn't sound like a great thing, although I know it happens and people do it, and
Yeah.
people live. It's okay. But, I didn't want my son to have surgery. So I started looking around, and I asked people, I said, what else is there? So that was where my thinking is. And so I talked to a few people, and ironically, it was my own mother who got into natural medicine later in life. I didn't grow up with natural medicine at all. And she said, "Have you ever gone to a homeopath?" And I said, a what? Homeo what? And she said, "Homeopath." And so I said, "I don't know that. What is that?" And this was back in 1995, 96, and they didn't have the internet, so you couldn't go searching for homeopaths near me. So I looked into the yellow pages, and the yellow pages had a couple of them listed in the whole state of Connecticut. And I drove to one. It was an hour away. Brought my 18-month-old son at that time, or no, he was, yeah, it was about 18 months by the time I got to him.
Yeah.
And basically, in an hour and a half, the homeopath observed him, talked to me about his habits and his sleeping and his food and his behavior. And when we were done, he gave him a couple of these two little white pellets and said, "Here, just give this to him. He'll like it. It's sweet." So he took them, and the ear infection went away, and
Oh
he
my
never had
God.
another one. And it was just like one of those, huh, how could that be? Like, that's just really interesting.
Yeah.
And then, so life went on. He got sick again. I brought him back to the homeopath, gave him a couple little pellets of something else, and the illness went away. And I'm like,
What was
wow,
the illness that second time that he got sick?
I think he had a bronchitis.
Okay.
Because sadly, when kids are given a lot of antibiotics, they tend to get more asthmatic or bronchitis type of issues. It's really sad. They're given a lot of antibiotics by the age of 3, and they tend to then have allergies for the rest of their life. And
Wow.
they have an allergic reaction, and then they also tend to get more asthma. So
Yeah.
he had a bronchitis, or bronchiolitis is what they called it back then.
Yeah.
And so he gave him, and he was breathing fine, and it was one of those, like, again, okay, I want to know more about this. Then I went and got myself treated. I said, okay, let me try this. Like, and I had some more mental, emotional things as a first time mom, and just feeling a little depressed, and went to this guy and talked to me and whatever, gave me some pills, and was like, wow. Like, I get it now. Like, this is really powerful stuff. So then I started to look into it a little more, and then I had another child, and then by the year 2000, I got really curious and went to a conference. By 2003, I started studying in earnest.
By 2003.
By 2003, yeah. And as it took me, because of my life and my other careers, it took me about 11 years to become nationally certified. But it doesn't mean that I didn't use homeopathy the whole time for my family and other people that were interested, and also, cases that I had to take in order to become certified. So
Yeah.
I've been exposed to it, I would say, since 1996, but more in earnest since 2000.
At what point did you go from going to a practitioner to actually buying the kit that you can literally, we'll talk about where people can get them,
Yeah.
but to
hmm
buying the kit and actually learning how to use it yourself? At what point was that?
I would say, I don't know if, I don't think they had the kits back then, but I did get remedies, and I had them, on hand to a certain extent. I started actually when my son probably was about 2 years old. My first son was 2 years old. And there was this great book called Homeopathy for Infants and Children, and it was my Bible. That
Wow.
whenever my kids got sick, I would look it up, and then I would try to, it would give you maybe, 5 to 15 different remedies to pick from, and I would read the description, and then I would say, okay, which is the one that might fit the best? And I would try it on my son, and if it worked, great. If it didn't, I would then try another one. And that's the beauty of homeopathy, is that if it's not the right match to the person's symptoms, it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're overdosing or giving too many drugs. It's a very different concept. So yeah, so I've just been learning through books and kits, and then through classes.
Yeah.
Mm.
recently, like literally last week, I started to get a sore throat.
Oh, no.
And then I was like, okay, this is like a normal thing. I go to the gym all the time. I'm constantly talking with people literally every single day. I shake hands and talk to like 5 to 10 different people. And I'm like, I'm just coming down with a cold. It's a normal thing. And all of a sudden, I lose hearing in my left ear. Like, not lose hearing, but pressure, right? So I
Mm.
even right now, as I talk to you, I have about 65% hearing in my left ear, even now.
Huh.
And I
Mm.
went to the doctor, and I haven't been to the doctors. And some people are going to be like, that's not good, Brandon. But I haven't been to the doctors in like probably 10
Mm.
years. I haven't been I'm 28 now. So it's been a
Wow.
long time.
So
So
you're
I
healthy.
went.
You're a healthy guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a healthy guy, thank God, I'm blessed.
Yeah.
But I went to the doctors and I'm like, I don't know like what I should do because I can't lose my voice because that's
Mhm.
literally how I earn a living is by talking and helping people and stuff like that. And
Right.
she's like, "Well, here's an antibiotic." She looked at my ears. I actually had an ear infection. And
Mm.
she's like, "Now, Brandon, if you didn't come in here, then it would have went to the other ear." And I'm like, "Well, it's a good thing I came in." And she gave me an antibiotic. And there's just it's just not a natural thing to take an
Mm.
antibiotic. And like she explained it to me because I asked her, and I've done gut research and stuff like this, and I've listened to
Mhm.
podcasts with health experts, and they always say you do not want to take antibiotics because yes, it kills the bad bacteria. But even my doctor said, now keep in mind you're going to have an upset stomach throughout this process because
Oh,
it doesn't differentiate what's good bacteria in your gut and what's the bad bacteria. So it just kills all of it.
yeah.
And I was like, well, that doesn't sound too good. Right. And people say that the gut is the second brain. So
Mhm.
I'm thinking, is this the best option? And then I literally look at my calendar and I'm like, oh my God, I'm talking to Abby next week. So, as an example, like even for someone like me, let's say that the antibiotic doesn't work. Like,
Yeah.
what would the process look like for me to speak with a practitioner of homeopathy
Mhm.
to find a natural remedy? What does that process look like?
So first I'd say I would hope, in if you were involved with a homeopath, that before you went to get the antibiotic, that and before you went to your medical doctor, unless it's urgent, obviously, if it's really you're in screaming pain, it's really, you do what you have to do. But when you have some kind of a symptom, is to try homeopathic medicine first. If you can, give it 24 hours. And if that doesn't relieve it in some way, shape, or form, then you go to your doctor and you get the antibiotic. It's the idea is that we're trying not to take as many antibiotics. We don't want to become antibiotic resistant. As we get older, there's all kinds of things, even like MRSA that you may have heard of, that is the thing that kills people from going into the hospital. It's a very deep infection. And some antibiotics, if you've had a lot of antibiotics in your life, you're not going to be able to react to it, and it could kill you if you don't
Wow.
have, if you're resistant. So the less antibiotics a person takes, the better off they are for the times that they really, really need them. And
Got
so
it.
the more that you can try to avoid, doesn't mean you always will. Like I'll give an example. My son, the same son that had the ear infections, he had a sinusitis. Sinuses were all full, and it was pretty bad. He was pretty clogged up. And I thought, this poor kid has had so many antibiotics. He was probably about 8 or 9 at this stage. And I was like, if I can avoid this, I would love to do this. So I gave him a remedy. It was called Calibic, calibicromium. It's an over the counter 30C potency, and we gave it to him every day. I don't remember how many times, but it within 3 to 5 days he was so much better. I mean, you could see it gradually getting better, and so we avoided the antibiotic on this. It was just like, phew, yeah, one
Wow.
down,
And
that we don't
what
have to
illness
do.
did he have at that point?
Sorry.
What illness did he have when
He
you
just had a sinusitis, which is basically lots of pressure up here. His nose was plugged. His eyes were kind of swollen from all of the clogged sinuses. Lots of mucus that just
okay.
doesn't come out. I mean, the sinuses are so thin that when they do get clogged, it's if you've ever had a sinus headache,
Yeah.
it's bad. So you want to try to avoid it whenever possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it. So that's something that I as a person, I don't even need to visit a practitioner for that. I could do some self-study myself, go
Yeah.
grab the kit and remedy myself in a way before even going to the
Mhm.
doctors.
Yes. Yeah, there's an education. It's not a very simple process, but once you know it, It's like, okay, I now know that I have a kit at home, I have my medicine, I have a couple of books, and now we have the internet. It's a beautiful thing. So even myself sometimes when I'm like, wow, I'm not sure exactly what remedy it is. So I may Google homeopathy for sinusitis, homeopathy for ear infection, homeopathy for ear pain. And you'll come up with, some homeopaths, thankfully, they post on their websites different articles, and there's newsletters and things that pop up. And so you read a couple of them, and a lot of times they list, maybe 5, 6, 7 remedies with descriptions. And after a couple of readings through different websites, you'll say, you know what? This remedy sounds most like me. This is the one I'm going to take,
Yeah.
and I'm going to try that first. And so you can do a lot of self diagnosing as long as you're using remedies that are 30C or lower in potency, which is what you get typically over the counter.
What is C? Like
C is
30C,
centesimal.
centesimal.
Centesimal. So I'll just there's a lot of education. So
Yes,
if you'll indulge me, I'll give you a little bit of education on that.
please.
So homeopathy is not material medicine. So it's not like vitamin C or echinacea. Although I love when people say, "Oh, I do homeopathy. I do vitamin C and echinacea," and I go, that's naturopathy. That's naturopathic medicine, which is great. It's good to support your system. It's good for, preventing colds, or when you have colds, to reduce all the inflammation in your body. I said, however, that's not homeopathy because there's material substance in that.
Yeah.
What is homeopathy is when you take something like, and I use an example of coffee because it's a liquid and it's an easy thing to imagine. And so we have a remedy in our arsenal called Coffea cruda. It's made from coffee. And the way that it's made is that you take a drop of coffee and you put it in a cup that has 99 parts full of water and a little bit of solvent, which is sometimes just a little alcohol for preservative. So one drop goes into that. And not only does it get stirred, but it also gets vigorously shaken. So let me do this, like I'm trying to get in the screen. So you pound it. So if this is the bottle, you pound it so that it activates the substance into the water.
Yeah.
That's a 1C. You do that 10 times. Then
Mm.
you take one drop of that substance, of that cup, you drop it into another cup that's 99% full, make it 100%. You succuss it 10 times. That's a 2C. You take one drop of that, you put it into the next cup, you succuss it 10 times. That's a 3C. So, what I'm talking about is in stores, you can get a 6C, 12C, or 30C. And they become highly diluted. And that's what makes homeopathic medicine energy medicine instead of chemical medicine or material substance. So,
Wow.
so the 30C is actually what I use more for physical symptoms, things like an ear infection. We would start with that, or a lot of COVID symptoms. I've been given 30Cs. But in my practice, I use 200 Cs, 1 Ms, which are 1000 Cs, and 10 Ms when needed, which are 10,000 Cs. And those are a lot more powerful. Imagine the energy that gets released into the water that many times. And so has higher energy vibration to it. I know
Yes.
that sounds a little woo woo for people, but I can only tell you that that stuff works.
It's very real.
It's
Yes, it's a
very
very
real. And
ancient healing.
yeah, it's in the early 1800s is when homeopathy came into play. So it's about 220, 30 years that
Yeah.
it's been around and being perfected and used in India and Europe and many other places, but not as much here in the United States. We have our
Why is
challenges.
that? Why is it not practiced? Like, let me give people an idea here. I actually want to type this in. The
Mm,
population of India, okay? There are 1.38 billion people
people,
that live in India. Now let's look at the United States. The United States is 329 million
million.
people. So
Hmm.
it's about, one fourth of what's in India. The reason I
Hmm.
bring that up is in India, to give you an idea of how seriously they take this, guys, India, you must be a medical doctor in order to even use and practice homeopathy. Like someone can't just, become a practitioner of homeopathy. Like you actually must be a doctor in order to do that, which gives you an idea of how serious they take this healing energy.
Mm.
Why is it so not talked about here in the United States. And when we talked about this,
Yeah.
Abby, you even
Mm,
said to me, Brandon, and I had someone else do this too, Dr. Kim Martin, before
mm.
we talked about naturopathic healing. And that
Yes.
was naturopathic. This is obviously very different. But
Mhm,
she was like, she said the same thing you did. She was like, just so you know, this is kind of a taboo topic that a lot
mhm,
of people don't know about. They're not receptive to. And I was like, well, the people that are listening into this show definitely want to hear about it because they're looking for the
mhm.
cutting edge. They're looking for what can help themselves naturally, right?
Good.
Why is that the case where you even gave me that preemptive remark of this is taboo? Why is that the
Mm.
case with this?
Well, I don't wanna say that it's because it doesn't work because that's not true. But if you look at power and money and how it exists in our country, what has power and money? The pharmaceutical industry.
Mm,
And so there are a couple of hospitals that are more advanced that have some alternative complementary medicine in it. They'll have Reiki, they'll have acupuncture, they'll have cranial sacral therapy, they'll have massage, they'll have everything, but they won't put homeopathy in because it is somewhat of a direct competition to pharmaceutical medicine in its own way. It's not material medicine, it doesn't cost a fortune. I mean, a blue tube that so this is what homeopathic medicine looks like when you go into a store. It looks like this in a blue tube. Pretty much this is what you get. And this costs $7 to $10 depending on where you get it.
yeah.
That's it. And there's 80 pellets in here, which is good for probably a good 35 to 40 doses. I mean, this can last a really long time. If one dose worked on my son's ear infection, this thing is going to last a really long time. And they
Wow.
last a long time. They don't really, it says it expires, but I tell people that it really doesn't.
Yeah.
As long as
And
you
that's
keep them
30C
dry.
on that
That's
bottle.
30C. Yes,
Okay.
most of the time. So 30C, let's see. I don't know if I could. There you go,
Yeah.
30C. And I pull this one up because this is what I call the gateway drug into homeopathy. It's called Arnica montana, and it's great for the road warriors, the exercise warriors, the ones that garden, snow shovel, where you're so overusing your muscles and you're bruised and you're sore, and it's like, and if you take a dose of arnica, you feel a whole lot better. It's also, I have a quick story about my other son. We were in Walmart, and he was on the cart. He was walking right below me, pushing the cart. He was probably 2 years old, and he fell down, boom, hit his head, and this like egg just started to pop on his head, and he was like crying, and he was so upset. And I'm like, okay, not good. And I thankfully carry arnica in my pocketbook, and I said, okay, let's go sit down. Let's just give you some arnica and let's just see how you do. And so we sat down, I gave him the arnica, and within 5 minutes he stopped crying, and he started to like say, I'm thirsty. And I was watching the egg on his head as it was coming out, and it slowly receded back into his head. And it was just, I remember looking at that going, oh my goodness, that was
Yes.
cool. And so it is one of those really powerful remedies. And I took it after I had a C-section. I took it, I did not need painkillers after a C-section.
Oh my
I
god.
took this, I was sore as crap, believe me, I was sore, but it was not in pain. And so
Mm.
I was taking that for a couple days. I was ready to leave the hospital in a day and a half. And they're like, no, you can stay for 3 days. I'm like, but I'm ready to go home, kind of thing. So it's just, there's some real power to this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now that compared to Tylenol, aspirin, those things,
Mm,
what is if you took one of those pellets, right? Obviously, it's heavily
mm,
compressed and compressed over and over and over again.
yeah.
What do those pellets consist of? Like, what is the substance inside of the pellet?
So the pellet is basically a sucrose or lactose sucrose pellet. It's a sugar pellet, basically. And that liquid that I was talking to you about that gets highly diluted, by the time you get, let's say, to a 30C glass that you have, you take a drop of that and drop it onto 80 pellets. One drop goes
Whoa.
on, and so the pellets are the delivery method. So the medicine, quote unquote, is on the outside of the pellet, and it's just the delivery method. So you put it under your tongue so that in a clean mouth, and you put it under your tongue to dissolve, and it goes into your system that way. And they all taste the same because it's just highly diluted energy water
Yeah.
onto these sugar pellets.
But some of them do different things.
Some of them do different things. So like this is my personal travel kit right here.
Whoa.
It's an older version, but the newer ones look like this. So if you go to Amazon, you'll find this is the kit that's the most readily available from Helios. It's from the UK. And so they have these are all the pellets you can see in there
Hmm.
like that. And so you would have pretty much access to almost anything. This would can you imagine traveling with something this small? Whoops, this small. And what it does is it is you have things for, traveler's diarrhea, for bumps and bruises, for bee stings, for burns, for stomach upset. I mean, you name it, you can help yourself with one of these kits. And a kit costs 65, $70 to have all these medicines at your disposal.
This is blowing my mind. Th- Seriously, really. Like,
Well, I appreciate that you want me to share this because I love this stuff. It's the coolest medicine on the planet. If there has to be medicine, this is the coolest medicine. It does I just have to say there is a place for conventional medicine. Believe me, if I'm in a car accident, I want everything that they have to offer. I want all the tests. I want painkillers if I'm really in a bad way. I want the surgery. I said, but for regular life, to stay well, to stay healthy, to do the work that I love to do, and all the people listening here, in order for you to do what you love to do, you want to be healthy and you want to feel like you can manage yourself, that taking homeopathy is a great way to stay healthy so you don't have to go to a hospital. You don't have to have surgery. You don't have to, take pharmaceuticals. I mean, that's really what it's about. It doesn't fix everything, but that's why we call it complementary
yes,
medicine. Wouldn't it
yes,
be nice if we could all play together in the sandbox and be happy and say, you know what, this stuff isn't working for your ear infections. Why don't you go see a homeopath?
yep,
Maybe they could help you. They don't go that way.
yes.
No.
We talk about this all the time, but we are energy beings. Like all that
Yes.
we consist of, like we're
Mhm.
physical. Like we can actually touch ourselves. We can touch the desk in front of us. We have the water bottle. We've got headphones. But if you took all those things and you put it under the world's most powerful microscope and zoom all the way in, all the way in, all the way on, all the way in, we're moving at the nano level, at the quantum level. Everything is moving. We are moving. Everything, nothing is truly physical. We perceive it to be that way. So when people talk about normal medicines like Tylenol and aspirin and Mucinex and all
Mhm.
those things, and my mom is like always like, I'll go over and I'll say, yeah, I got a slight headache. And she's like, take Tylenol. And it's like, not that it's not necessary yet. Like I don't need that right now because when I take things like that, and it's very rare that I do, it makes me feel just a little bit off. And I
Mm,
heard someone say at one time, it's because when you take those medications, it dulls your vibrational frequency. Like we're
mhm,
all operating at a specific frequency, right? Your emotions have frequency. You are a frequency. Every item has
mhm,
a specific frequency, every object. And when you take that, it's changing your frequency. It sounds to me like when you are using these homeopathic remedies, it, like what you just said, it complements your
mhm,
frequency.
mhm. It helps the body to heal itself. So the body is wired to do that healing. And what chronic disease is, things like chronic migraines or IBS, which is irritable bowel syndrome, or depression or anxiety, things like that. It's your energy pattern that's stuck. And so when homeopathic medicine is introduced and it's the right match to your symptoms, it unsticks it so that the body can heal itself. So if you think of it, you get a paper cut. Nobody loves paper cuts, right? But they're there. As long as you keep them clean, no matter what you do, they're going to heal if your body can do it. It will heal. And so that's like, I always remember, okay, no matter how sick you are, you're going to get better. You're going to heal.
Yeah.
And so when you get stuck, you need that oomph. And that's what the homeopathic medicine can do.
How much of this do you believe? Because I asked Dr. Kim Martin the same question with what she does with naturopathic remedies.
Mhm.
How much of this do you believe is? I know there's studies that have been done and they are fascinating. I implore everyone to go look at them because I did before this interview.
I know where you're going. Go ahead.
How much of this do you believe is the mind, the placebo,
Placebo.
versus what this
Yeah.
this pellet is actually doing for you?
So placebo effect is useful in many different areas. It's not just in homeopathy or naturopathy, even in with doctors. So here's a placebo, a bad placebo. You go to a doctor, they tell you, "Oh, you have cancer, you've got 3 weeks to live." Some people die within 3 weeks. And other people say, I don't want to believe that. And then they live for 3 more years. So it all depends, some of it on your mind. However, with homeopathy, I have people who say, "I don't believe in this stuff, but I'll try it, whatever." They'll take it and then it doesn't matter if they believe in it or not. And I see it especially when I treat babies. Babies don't know. I treat dogs sometimes, not a lot, but sometimes I'll do like for behavior problems or fear or appetite issues, and you give it to them, they don't know. They don't know what it is, and so they do fine. They do very well with homeopathy. And so it's like it doesn't I don't think that homeopathy is placebo effect any more than it would be for pharmaceuticals or naturopathy. I think there is something about the power of suggestion, but I see homeopathy work on animals and children, and they don't know the difference. So,
Yeah, well said. It's like gravity, whether you believe it exists or not. If you drop something, the pen's gonna fall, right? It's
right,
gonna happen
right.
anyways.
Exactly, right.
Cool.
Yeah.
What are the most common, because I'm sure friends call you all the time, families
Mhm,
reaching out to you because I guarantee you're just the person in the circle who people are like, "Oh my god, I wonder what Abby thinks about this," right?
mhm.
Like, what are most people coming to you for? And what are the most common quote unquote symptoms or ailments or conditions that people are seeking homeopathic remedies for?
So are you talking about friends and family, or are you talking about clients?
Both. Well, in general, we'll
In
say. I guess
general.
that might have been a weird way to ask it,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
in general.
So these days, I would say that I do get a lot of women who are either in perimenopause or menopausal that are having different lifestyle issues for sure, and unusual symptoms. I also have new moms who are dealing with their children and their babies who have either illnesses or coughs, colds, flus, that kind of thing. A lot of times there are a lot of chronic things, a lot of migraines, and I always say migraines, IBS. Um, I've also seen a lot of what I call iatrogenic illness, basically illnesses that are caused from too much medication.
Mm.
A lot of times I'll say to somebody, they come to me with depression or anxiety, and I go, "So you're on this medication, you're on an anti anxiety or an antidepressant. How long have you been on it?" And they say to me, maybe 20 years.
Mm.
And I go, "What do you think? Is it working?" And they go, "I don't know. I just keep taking it." They keep hoping. They just keep hoping that it's
Yeah.
gonna work, and that's why they're landing now in front of me, because they're still not fixed in a way. But now they've had 20 years of these really powerful mind-altering drugs that make it really challenging to try to figure out how to help. We can, there are things to do, but many times there's no way that we're gonna even attempt to suggest that they talk to their doctor about going down on their medications.
Mhm.
That's a huge process. And if anybody here is listening and you just got onto an anti-anxiety or antidepressant or is considering it, look at homeopathy first, because
Mm.
once you get onto one of those medications and you stay on it too long, which is basically longer than 2 months, it's just such a struggle to get off of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just tell people, just because it should work, it doesn't always work. I'm going to say like 1 out of 20 people I talk to get help from antidepressants and anti-anxiety. The
Yeah.
rest of them are just hoping that they do.
When you meet someone who's been on those for 20 years and you talk about homeopathy, is
Mhm.
homeopathy something that you supplement that with, or do you help them talk to their doctor to get on a plan to get off of them? Like, or do you just add homeopathy to the mix?
So we can add homeopathy to the mix first. If we want to see if they start to feel better when they're taking homeopathy along with their regular medication. I am not one. I didn't prescribe their medication, and it's really against my core and also my ethics to say, you should stop, because there's
Yes.
such danger. I didn't prescribe it. I can't tell you to get off it.
Yeah.
But if you are starting to feel better with the homeopathic medicine, then that's when you might say to your doctor, "Hey, I'd like to start slowly tapering down while I'm still taking the homeopathy." But there's a lot of communication with homeopathy. There has to be frequent communication with the homeopath so we know what's going on. And people are not used to being, uh, uh, talking to their doctors. And like text with my clients sometimes, very frequently actually. They email me fairly regularly, and I'm so much more available than any medical doctor is, mostly because I have a smaller practice. I also don't my intakes are 2 hours long. How many appointments can I have in a day? Like, I
Yes.
can't have, 15 in an hour. It doesn't work that way. It's not a get them in, get them out. It's a real focused profession. So we really do care about our clients. Every homeopath works differently, but the way I do it is I like to be nurturing. I like to be supportive, especially as people are learning about homeopathy and what to expect and what can happen when you take remedies and that kind of thing. So the communication is so, so important.
Yeah, that's a big difference. It's almost like you
Yeah.
are, in essence, a health coach versus just
Mm.
a simple practitioner of medicine who prescribes something and then you don't talk to them for
Yeah.
20 years or until you need a refill on the prescription or whatever it might
Yeah.
be. You're someone who
Yeah.
is alongside, and that takes more of your time, of
Yeah.
course.
Right.
And I'm curious, when you yourself went back to the homeopath after you helped your son with the ear infection, and you went to them
Mhm.
and you were experiencing depression, anxiety, and they helped you with homeopathic remedies.
Mhm.
What did you feel after you started implementing what they recommended to you? And how soon did you begin to feel better?
So I had an interesting experience, which has been very helpful as a homeopath. So he gave me a remedy that is sensitive to coffee, meaning if you drink the coffee, it can intensify the effects of the remedy. And I didn't know that, and I didn't realize I was that sensitive. I knew nothing. So he gave me the remedy. It was a one-time dose. It was like a 200 C potency. And I was still drinking coffee every day. And I went back to him a month later and I said, I am so amped up. I'm so anxious. This is not working, blah, blah. And the first thing he said to me is, are you drinking coffee? I'm like, yeah. He said, oh, I didn't know that. Just stop your coffee. So I stopped the coffee and it was like, oh my goodness. So I took another dose after I stopped the coffee because it antidoted the remedy, took the
Mm,
dose, and it was just like, all the air came out. It was just like, ah, I don't know how to explain it except that life got better. It righted itself. And, within a few weeks, it was like I had joy back. I was excited. I wasn't feeling weighed down. I wasn't depressed. And I was like, wow, this is what homeopathy can do. I get it
yeah,
now. So I had a little bit of a rocky start, and I'm being completely transparent. That's how it worked.
yeah.
But now I know that there are some people that are very sensitive, and I do say to them, you might want to get off coffee for a couple weeks. You can do tea, you can have as much caffeine as you want, but it's coffee for some reason that can be an issue for
Interesting.
some people, but not everybody.
Maybe it's like the energy or something that is consisting, like, inside the coffee or what the coffee is or who knows, but that's
It deranges the vital force. That's what the founder of homeopathy said, even in the 1800s. He calls it deranging the vital force. So it does, if you drink a cup of coffee, it totally changes your energy pattern. And so
whoa.
that's why he thought that long time ago. And for some people, it's still true.
Do you drink coffee to this day?
So I didn't drink it for 10 years. I was like,
Wow.
no, remedies are working. I don't need coffee. And then I don't know, maybe 5 years ago, I went to Dunkin' and got iced coffee. And I was like, wow, that's good.
Yes,
And,
you're like, "Derange
uh,
me, let's go."
and I was fine. And thankfully, because I have a stronger vital force, I've taken enough remedies where I'm just in a much healthier state than I ever was. I used to get frequent infections and colds and coughs, and I don't think I get sick more than once every couple of years now at the most. So
That's
it's
amazing.
really helped my immune system to just be stronger. And I also just want to share something else that I do, and I think other homeopaths do, is when you take someone's case, meaning you hear their story, is sometimes you're going to hear that there are things that are affecting them in their life, like foods, especially. Like they say, you know what, when I eat pizza, my stomach hurts. I'm like, ding, ding, there's a gluten sensitivity. Or, I get diarrhea a lot. I'm not sure why. And I say, well, tell me about how much dairy do you eat and drink? And oh, I love cheese and I love yogurt and I eat ice cream. And I'm like, you might have a dairy sensitivity, so here's something to consider, or sugar. So the three offenders you probably have heard is gluten, dairy, and sugar, and most people need to be aware that that could be a part of their picture. Or if
Yeah.
they're eating something every day, I love eggs, I eat it every day, but I'm tired at 3 in the afternoon. I'm like, let's try an experiment. Let's not eat eggs for a couple weeks and let's just see what happens. And sometimes that fixes the problem without any homeopathic medicine. It's just we look at people holistically. It's not like, oh, you have a pain here, let's fix that pain. It's
Mhm.
more like you have this pain, but let's look at all of who you are. And so some of that advice that I share with people is also very important. It has nothing to do with homeopathy. It's about the holistic overview of a person's life. Or somebody that, doesn't do any self-care and they're very stressed.
Hmm.
And so I'll talk about remedies for stress and we'll look at how to, deflate the stress. I said, but there has to be some balance. Things People are not used to doing things for themselves. They think, I'm sick, I'm going to go to the doctor, they're going to give me some medicine and I'll feel better. I don't have any responsibility here.
Yeah.
And in the real world, there is responsibility. You have to take care of yourself. You need to exercise. You need to eat right. You need fresh air. You need friends. You need good relationships. And if any of those are broken or non existent, I encourage people one at a time to start working on them. And it could be even just like, have you ever meditated? And even
Hmm.
though the type A personality, oh, I can't sit there, I'm like, you can grow into it and it helps. You need to be a human being and not a human doing for just even 10 minutes of a day.
Yeah.
It's so important. And so we look at, and that has nothing to do with homeopathy. Again, it's just about this holistic view.
Will you still
Mm.
suggest a remedy of some sort while people are making those lifestyle changes?
Of course.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
But I do want to see that they're willing to do something because no matter what I do, like I know somebody, one of my clients that smokes cigarettes, and she comes to me because she gets frequent bronchitis. Duh. That makes sense, right? So I can give her a remedy to help when she has bronchitis, but if she keeps that offensive agent of the tobacco coming into her system, there's only so much that homeopathy can do.
Yes. You're
So
not
you
just
have
looking to cure symptoms, you're looking to cure the root cause of what's causing those symptoms over and over and over.
right. If your boss is obnoxious and abusive to you and you are affected by them, that's an issue that needs to be addressed. Or your spouse, if you're in an abusive relationship, and the body speaks the mind. There you go. That's
Mm.
what I wanted to make sure I said today. The body speaks the mind. And so I have been talking to people all the time and they'll say, I've had migraines since I was 13. So tell me what happened when you were 13. Let's see, let me think. My grandmother died. And I go, "Were you close to your grandmother?" I loved her dearly. We were such good buds, and she taught me how to bake. Da da da. And it's her body saying, "I can't deal with the grief of my grandma."
Wow.
And the
Even
person
after all
could
these years.
the person could be 65 and they've had migraines for years since they were 13. As long as there's if there's an etiology, I'm going to look for it. And
Yeah.
most of the time it's a mental emotional cause that makes the body speak in some way, shape, or form.
It's like this trauma that hasn't been properly worked through in a way.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
And people don't look at that. So you go to your doctor and you say you got migraines, they just try and hit it with pharmaceuticals, but they don't say, so why do you think you have them? Or
Yeah.
when did they start and what could be the cause of them?
Can you imagine a doctor asking that question?
I wish.
Yeah.
I
I'm sure
wish.
there's some that do, and I think that's important to say,
Yeah.
but I've never heard
Mhm.
that question being asked because that's not what they're
Mhm.
trained to do. They're trained to treat the symptom of why the person came in. That's
Right.
what they're trained in school, and it's
Mhm.
it's not that they're bad people. They're probably some of the greatest people out there. They want to help people.
Mhm.
That's why they got into this practice, but they're
Mhm.
just not trained and educated in different ways to help people like
Right.
homeopathy. And obviously, you've gone deep into this world. You've become a
Yeah.
practitioner. Like a
Deep.
big part of your practice is around this. And I
Mm.
remember, we
Mhm.
talked about, what we could talk about today. And you
Mhm.
said it was very clear to hear how passionate you are about what you do with helping
Mhm.
people when it comes to homeopathy, but just helping people live a better life with homeopathy being the vehicle to do so.
Mm.
What's your mission at this point in your life? Like during this chapter, what are you looking to accomplish when it comes to homeopathy and helping people? What does that mission look like for you?
So I think, if there is a mission, I'll call it even a legacy, if there is one, is I really want to instill in people, and you'll see even on my website, I have interviews and I have educational materials. I want to educate people around homeopathy because it's not just homeopathy. It's You have to understand it's a very different form of medicine. And so that I want people to know how to learn to use it on their own. And so my tea with a homeopath is an introductory session that I do for free, and now I do it virtually since COVID. Used to do them in person. I loved it, where we just sit down and chat about homeopathy, kind of like what we're doing right now. This is kind of like a tea with a homeopath in a way, but it's just your questions and not everyone else's questions. And then I run study groups where these are people that really want to learn homeopathy, and we meet once a month, and we use a book, and we talk about what have you done this month, and I talk to them how to take a case and how to help your friends and how to use a kit. And so I feel like my legacy is going to be, the best as I can, is to leave material, to leave more people in the world that know how to do homeopathy. So that's a lot of it. But then I also, for myself, I love learning, and I love doing webinars and amping up my skills and making it easier, better, faster, more effective. So I'm always looking for the better way. So I spend time doing that as well. So it's all of that.
You're gonna create you
Mm.
you are creating, and you will only continue to create one hell of a mark on this
Thank
world
you.
and in this
I
specific
try.
industry, because you
Yeah.
just have such a vibrancy when you talk about this and just in general,
Mm,
but because you've been doing this for so long now.
mm, mm,
One of my, before I ask where people can find out more about
yeah.
Tea with a Homeopath,
Mm,
what would you say to someone who wants to begin? We talked about the Helios kit that people can get right on Amazon, so they have their
mhm.
own kit.
Yeah.
And is there a specific book or reading material that you'd recommend to people so they know what they're doing with the kit that they buy? Where should we begin?
Mhm. So if they get the Helios kit, there's also a flyer or a pamphlet in there for a woman who has an online beginner study group called Mary's Homeopathy, and you'll get information there. So there's a Facebook group of like she's got like 25,000 people in it. It's amazing, of people that are learning homeopathy. But if you even Google, beginner homeopathy courses, beginner study groups, you're going to find there are practitioners, not just me, that offer these classes. Sometimes they're like a quick microwaved version, like, let's just do it in a day. I like to do it over time so people can live with it, experience it, have opportunities to do it. So I just go, I do this the slow and go kind of version. I don't do the microwave version typically.
Mhm.
So there are classes out there. There's the School of Homeopathy in the UK. Thankfully, with virtualness, they have a beginner homeopathy course. I mean, so it's not just me that you can learn from. There are other people, other versions, other opportunities that people can do, and there's more and more of that, which I think is fantastic. So people can kind of, let's get you in there so that you can know that this exists and use it when possible for for yourself and your family.
Yeah, absolutely. Is
Yeah.
there a specific book that you read that is, not like giant textbook, but something that you can buy and go through that's an enjoyable read that talks more about this that you'd recommend to people?
Um, yes, so I do, when I can, I get kits and I do resell them. And when I do, I give people this handout that just has some of the, recommended reading. So what I'm going to suggest is, if people are interested in that recommended reading list, they can just contact me through my website and just say, I'd like to have that recommended reading list, because there's a few books. But there's one book that I have all my study group students read before we jump into any remedies or anything. It's called Beyond Flat Earth Medicine
Mm,
by Dr. Tim Dooley. And you can get it online as a PDF. You can't print it, but he has it free, I believe, online. You can get it downloaded for your ebook or whatever, or you order the book, it's $10.
okay.
And it is a great primer to homeopathy, why it's needed, what it's used for, how it got started, all that. And it's a very easy read, and it's really thin, but it's called Beyond Flat Earth Medicine by Dr. Tim Dooley. Highly recommend it.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. We'll put that in the description for everyone listening so you can go down there, you
Yeah.
can check it out. For people who are listening and not just watching, what's the website URL that people can find you and learn more about Tea with a Homeopath? Because I know the next session that you have planned is October 17th at
Hmm.
7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Correct. It's a virtual Zoom meeting that I offer. And so they can go to my website. Thank you for allowing me to share it. It's Homeopathy Healings with an S. So it's HOMEOPATHY HEALINGS .com. and my email is homeopathyhealings@gmail.com. So it's as long as you got homeopathy healings, all one word, then you'll get it. I have a replay of a webinar I did. It's on my event page, called "What Everyone Wants to Know About Homeopathy." It's about 40 minutes long. It kind of revisits some of what we talked about, but I use PowerPoint there. And then there's some 20 minutes of Q&A that people have done. There's also the registration for the Tea with a Homeopath on October 17th, and any other free stuff that I do, I put on my events page. So I
Amazing.
encourage people. I give a lot away free. I give a free 15-minute consult for people that are like, I don't know if this is for me or not. Let me check with Abby. And so they can go to my Calendly, page. So that I really try to engage people where they're at.
You do. It's very clear you're
So
doing this
thanks.
not just to earn millions, but you're doing this to help people to feel
Yeah.
better and live a better life. And I think that's
Mm,
so apparent throughout this conversation that people know that already.
thank you.
And there's links, guys, to in the description to homeopathyhealings.com. So you can check out the next Tea with a Homeopath. You can check out Abby's webinar, that the replay, which I'll include down there as well. So just check out the links. You'll see a lot of cool things there.
Thank
And
you.
please feel welcome to go to LinkedIn and follow Abby on LinkedIn too. Connect with her there, start a conversation. Wherever you hang out most on social media, go follow her so you can follow everything else that she's doing.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
this was
Mm,
amazing. Thank you
oh,
for bringing this. Like, this is all new to me. So again, like fire hose of information right now. But I
I
know what
know.
I'm going to be doing next is I'm going to go order that kit off Amazon. I'm going to
Mhm,
check out that book, and I'm going to check the replay out on your website too. So
mhm,
I encourage everyone listening to do the same. If you're looking for
mhm.
more tools to add to your toolbox to feel better and live a better life, then I encourage you to do that too.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thanks,
Thank
Baron.
you, Abby. We'll talk soon.
Yeah. Okay, great. Be well.
You too. There's something for you here if you have a current illness or ailment, or you're just not feeling the way that you want to feel, whether it's anxiety or depression or sinus infection or whatever it is. There's something in this conversation for you to either learn how to practice and use homeopathy for yourself. Right. And if you are someone who's like, whoa, this whole world of information that I never knew existed, I want to use this to help my friends and family, then you can join one of those study groups with Abby. Again, her information is in the description. Go check it out because she's just an awesome human being who is giving you these free resources to learn and grow and educate yourself. And who knows what you'll be able to do for you when it comes to this, but who knows who you'll be able to help that's important to you in your life. If not now, then at some point in the future. I know you guys are obsessed with health and wanting to live a better life. And I hope that this had everything that you wanted and more. If it did, if you took away even just one thing, then again, you're the reason the show has grown the way it has over the past year and a half organically, which is incredible. And I'm grateful to you for sharing this show with just one person who could also use this information or who might find it fascinating. Thank you for being the best part of the Be Better team. And until we talk again next time, continue to be better.